The internet erupted in shock as soon as the exclusive images were made public. When Rasheeda's unvarnished voice spreads on social media, tensions grow. "You selected her over me." Devoted followers are startled to discover flaws in Kirk Frost's idyllic existence overnight. As whispers circulated, casting doubt on allegiances and revealing a secret no one had anticipated, emotions were running high. In a household already put to the test by celebrity and naturally, these shocking claims have sparked a flurry of conjecture. Could the Lady Kirk allegedly intended to have a family with a really joyful heart? As timelines filled with texts show, friends had to choose sides, leaving the family split. Fans frantically trying to put together the facts as insiders exchanged whispered admissions. Amidst the confusion, a single picture of Kirk clutching an unidentified infant is a chilling representation of treachery. Fans are left gasping, as each new revelation they discover seems more explosive than the previous. With each remark, this overnight incident has become the topic of reality TV fandom, with fans rallying behind Rasheeda's anguish and a section on fire. Get ready, because what comes next will keep you on the edge of your seat and confound expectations. Watch closely to see every startling turn as Rasheeda's world collides. As Kirk hesitated at the edge of the opulent marble entryway, the anxiety escalated due to his secret. Broken light from the chandeliers over his tired face, Rasheeda's scent, hung in the air like a ghost, and her absence was deafening. With a shaky hand, Kirk combed through his hair, instinct telling him that each second that passed was another nail in the coffin of their marriage. With his phone in his hand like a lifeline, he browsed through communications from friends who are mutually supportive, but none that provide answers. Suffocated by his own secrets, he felt the walls closing in about him. A gentle Rasheeda's arrival was signaled with a click. With a garment of dignity carefully wound about her, she walked with silent elegance. She stopped, looking across the room with steely purpose, and Kirk's breath caught. She strode by him without saying anything, her heels resonating in the quiet. With every stride driven by desperation, Kirk swallowed the knot in his throat and followed the living room's mahogany paneling welcomed each of them, but the warmth was gone. On the sofa table, 2 glasses were left unattended. They formed sticky rings when their contents dried. Rasheeda said, "You lied," in a voice as fragile as broken glass. Kirk tightened his throat. She kept her gaze on the framed wedding photo, but he wished he could reach out and close the gap between them. Now, the picture of better days seemed betraying them from its vantage point. Head in hands, Kirk slid himself onto the velvet set. "I'm sorry," he said in a whisper. "I never intended to do you harm." Rasheeda's face became stern. "I apologize." "Is insufficient," she said, her shoulders shaking. "You chose her over me and created another life behind my back." The recollection of their disagreement at midnight made Kirk's chest tighten. The one that had pushed him into someone's embrace, they pledged to keep secrets. He had promised to stop it, however, every goodbye became into more difficult. His judgment was clouded by guilt. When he saw Rasheeda's anguish, he knew he had arrived at an irreversible point. A dot. Photographers outside pressed their instruments against the window, hoping desperately to get a peek of their failing marriage. Through thick draperies, flashes lit, causing Kirk to remember strobe-like anguish. Every flash of light, like broken dreams, flickered over the mosaic floor. Echoing Rasheeda's grief, Kirk pictured the headlines. "The double life of Kirk Frost is revealed. Rasheeda's husband betrayed her baby in secret." The celebrity controversy infuriated fans. His chest constricted at he tore up the shards of seclusion he had left in the kitchen at the notion of public scrutiny. The granite countertop was discolored by a coffee cup that was left there. This reminded Kirk of the mornings they spent, laughing over cups like this, organizing trips and envisioning aging together. His fingertips brushed the cracked porcelain as he extended his hand, missing the carefree days of the past. However, the effect of betrayal became too common. The past could not be reclaimed. Standing in the doorway, Rasheeda's silhouette was framed by the golden glow of the sun, transforming her into a deity of suffering and retribution. Guilt coursing through his veins, Kirk stood up. "Tell me everything," she insisted. Kirk paused. Telling the story of meetings behind closed doors with the other lady were like opening new wounds. But he had to tell Rasheeda the truth, no matter how harsh. He spoke about dark parking garages, hurried hugs, deserted corridors, and whispered discussions that never should have happened. Every admission struck like a hammer. Below Rasheeda's cheekbones were hollowed down by restless nights, and her eyes gleamed with unshed tears. When Kirk was done, the room held its breath. There was a thunderous silence from Rasheeda at last. She said in a quiet but firm voice, "I no longer know who you are." Kirk blinked as her words took effect, pulling him down. his voice failed him. As he sought to elicit an apology, an explanation, anything to save what was left, outside, he was reminded that life was going on mercilessly by the far-off wail of sirens. The silence broke suddenly. Kirk's attention was pulled to his phone. By a flurry of text alerts, a blurry video of him was discovered by fans with unmistakably alive. The mystery woman's tummy curved. The world watched as he held a little infant in his arms, covered in fluffy pink blankets. Rasheeda's voice reverberated in the empty room as she read the caption out loud, making Kirk's stomach turn. New objectives and a new life. No sword could cut as deeply as the words. The tension was broken raw and jagged by Rasheeda's sob. Kirk sank to his knees next to her as he covered the gap. He grabbed her hand and skin, chilled under his quivering fingers. Anger flared as she pulled away. Behind Kirk felt the earth give way under him as she shed her tears. This agony was no longer private. Millions of people watched the spectacle unfold on every screen and analyzed his fall from grace. Allies dispersed in the days that followed like scared birds. Once Kirk's closest friend Yandi posted a vague statement online. Always put your family first. Fans conjectured if the message was a cover for Rasheeda or a veiled poke at Kirk's transgressions. Unable to reconcile, Scrappy, his devotion to both, vanished from social media, stoking speculation that he had chosen the wrong side. The story was shaped by the increasing volume of the murmurs. Once admired, Kirk Frost is now despised. Reed withdrew into seclusion, offering no interviews without making any claims. Kirk had to negotiate a whirlpool of remorse and shame without her. The rhetoric he used in meetings with public relations experts sounded hollow, practiced, privately written. Apologies were insufficient to put out the fire that the supporters had ignited. Feature Leica sends a text message to a hidden address. It's a sincere letter to the unborn child who is suffering. Kirk showed up by himself for a charity event one evening. He could hardly distinguish the faces above the brilliant chandeliers. Although the room was alive with courteous chatter, Kirk could feel every silence and sidelong glance. Cameras as he passed through the throng. It flashed. His face was covered with forced grins. He saw the little group of Rasheeda huddled in a corner, backs turned there. Like a tidal wave, guilt swept over him. He thought about running away, but honor drew him on. He walked over to their group. Slow, boy. When you're ready, I'm prepared to speak. There was silence. His face was scanned by raised eyes, some icy, some inquisitive. A friend gave a head shake. Narrow line pushed into the mouth. A second whispered to a friend, amusement mixed with resentment. Kirk felt vulnerable, his flaws accentuated. The altruistic facade of the charity function vanished, exposing the harsh truth. That night, everything in his life had altered forever. When Kirk got home, his house was deserted. The quiet was strange and harsh. He moved from room to room, looking for solace in places that had previously been shared. The pillows still smelled of Rasheeda, a bitter reminder of the warmth that was no longer there. The nursery's walls were painted in gentle tones for a child he would hardly know, and Kirk sank to the floor. Blurred tears, envisioning the life expanding beyond his reach as he laid a hand on the empty cradle. The weight of his decisions increased. With every hour that went by, the unborn kid crossed his mind, unwitting observer of his deceit. He recalled Rasheeda, whose heart had been broken by the guy she trusted most. And he considered the audience, who mercilessly critiqued, observed, every slip-up, every confession. In the middle of his own destruction, Kirk came to the realization that salvation could be a long way off. There was no assurance that he would ever make it. But in the shadow of that lonesome night, a glimmer of resolve ignited within him. He would come out of hiding. He would face the consequences, accept responsibility for his errors, and stand up for Rasheeda and the kid. The world eagerly awaited the next chapter in this thrilling tale, regardless of what pieces of his life were still out there. Kirk promised within to confront the storm he had let loose, at whatever price, inhaling the subtle aroma of fresh paint and baby powder. Kirk pressed his palms against the cool nursery wall and prepared himself for the next stage of his self-inflicted misery. He knelt on the hardwood floor, where the slanted dawn light from the half-closed blinds created stripes. Every ray of light shone on his regret like a spotlight. Burning under his chest was determination. He owed it to everyone he had deceived to confront them head-on. In the master's suite, he slipped out of the room and stood before a mirror, gazing into the hollow eyes of a man who had exchanged honesty for secrecy. He let out a shuddering breath and decided to contact Rasheeda's best friends. He had avoided open channels of communication. For a long time, with his pulse racing, he first called Yandi, with a hope that was almost dead. Her tired voice replied a few moments later. "Kirk," she remarked in a tone. his voice breaking with remorse. He apologized bluntly and said that concealing the pregnancy was cowardice rather than a form of protection. He pledged to be open and honest going forward. Before speaking, Yandi stopped and stretched silently. If you desire to restore confidence, actions will be more effective than words. Kirk nodded too. He vowed to show his earnestness, presenting himself as though she could see. Then, he composed a letter addressed to Scrappy, recognizing the conflict he must experience between his allegiance to Kirk and his support for Rasheeda. He acknowledged that being quiet simply served to foster rumors. Guardedly forgiving, Scrappy warned Kirk that any mistake would solidify his banishment. With every conversation with Frank, Kirk's pride was eroded and humility replaced his haughtiness. By the end of the day, Kirk saw a shaky optimism beginning to grow. Maybe honesty may repair the damage caused by deceit. In an attempt to use his own power to leverage family relations, Kirk asked Rasheeda's sister for a private meeting that evening. Failed. He discovered her drinking tea in a bright patio where birds sang above. She smiled sardonically, one eyebrow raised with wary interest. Kirk spoke on how much he loved Rasheeda and how he regretted being secretive because he was afraid of confrontation. He pleaded with her to express his genuine regret to Rasheeda. Reluctantly, the sister consented, vowing not to minimize his shortcomings. Kirk saw the pieces of faith he had broken through her eyes and saw the vast effort that lay ahead. Meanwhile, Rasheeda secluded in a family friend's guest house with a view of the ocean. She battled her own emotional storm. She paced the wooden floors, mentally reliving Kirk's confessions. Every recollection of affection and joy was now tinged with treachery. The repetitive crash of the waves seemed to mock her and provided no solace. Chaos with its unrelenting constancy. She used the group chat to talk to her closest confidants. Every message, a mixture of hurt, rage, and wary interest in Kirk's newfound openness. She texted to one pal, "I feel so lost. How can I trust someone who destroyed my whole world?" Responses were pouring in, with some pleading with her to give Kirk a chance, saying this could be the tipping point. Shuddering under his own determination, Kirk showed up at the guest house unexpectedly late that evening. Stepping onto the balcony was Rasheeda. Siebes's hair was lifted. As Kirk got closer, his breath caught. Every quiet stride was accompanied with remorse. At first, she remained silent. Her gaze were downcast and her arms were still clasped. A bouquet of gardenia's favorite hand was given by Kirk. Something delicate in her chest appeared to be stirred by the aroma. Whispering, "I know saying sorry isn't enough," he avoided looking into her eyes. "However, I'm here completely exposed and prepared to face whatever repercussions in order to get this corrected." Rasheeda was surprised when she glanced up. Her eyes flickered. Kirk's voice steadied as he continued, "If time is needed, I'll hold on. I'll give you room if you need it. Tell me what you need, please." With a slow exhale, the tension in her shoulders subsided infinitely. She paused for a while before saying, "Show me you're serious," with a wave of relief coursing through him. Kirk nodded. He pledged to give up his phone, forward all messages, request third-party review, and do whatever it takes to demonstrate his dedication. What may have been the smallest trace of a grin trembled over Rasheeda's lips. Moonlight and the scent of jasmine swirled about them as they stood silent. Since the controversy began, for the first time, Kirk saw tenuous but genuine strands of connection coming back together. Kirk fulfilled each promise during the course of the next week. He buried his soul in sessions that left him exhausted but full of optimism when he went to Ku's treatment with Rasheeda's therapist. He gave up his phone to a mutually trusted acquaintance, enabling Rasheeda to examine each and every interaction. Solo news releases were replaced with joint statements. In a public statement, Kirk emphasized his sincere regret for his errors and his love for Rasheeda and their kids. At every appearance, Rasheeda sat next to him, arms clasped, a unified front built on suffering and tenacity rather than artifice. As the tone of the tale changed, fans watched with rapt attention. Some people were unconvinced and insisted for verbal confirmation. Social media was buzzing. Are they really getting back together? This seems planned. Videos that were leaked showed Kirk and Rasheeda strolling hand in hand along a lake, heads lowered in serious discussion. The pictures provoked discussion. Real reconciliation or repair? Feelings ran high as admirers came together to support Rasheeda's courage in addressing Kirk's treachery head-on. However, some said she was weak for giving him another opportunity in the Frost home. With a shaky smile, as Rasheeda watched, Kirk got up early to assist with the kids' breakfast as the tension subsided into cautious hope. He expressed regret for skipping the school assembly last week in order to attend public relations meetings. With a soft touch, Rasheeda thanked him in private and accepted his apologies. They shared memories together about early aspirations and first dates. In the midst of the scandal's upheaval, there were little moments that seemed revolutionary. Everybody shared it was like taking back a piece of their history when they laughed. But there were questions hidden beneath the surface. She was informed by Rasheeda, "Write in your journal that forgiving someone was like walking on hot coals." There was a chance of blazing treachery with every stride forward. Kirk was also plagued by guilt and slept through the night, worried that any mistake would send them plunging back into the abyss. Both of them were aware that recovery would not be quick or easy, but with genuine attempt. They envisioned a day in the future when trust could be restored. Outside, when the unidentified lady appeared on a podcast and verified Kirk's paternity, in a quiet but resolute voice, the pressure increased. She begged followers to let the kid have her because she said she wanted support, not turmoil, a typical existence. Public opinion changed as a result of the disclosure. Some were indignant with Kirk for bringing the mother into the public eye, while others applauded his attempts to keep her identity a secret. Rasheeda experienced a range of emotions as she listened to the interview: resentment for her own bravery, and sympathy for the mother's isolation, as well as a reluctant admiration for the woman's handling of the limelight. Kirk responded with a poignant message that emphasized his duty to both families and praised the mother's fortitude. Determined to do the right thing for everyone, he set up private financial and emotional assistance for her and the kid. Rasheeda was at his side at a news conference, reaffirming her will to overcome the agony in a calm voice. "Our family dynamic has changed," she told them. "However, we choose healing and honesty over denial." Days became weeks, and the public's sentiment started to fluctuate wildly. Fans, influencers, and podcast hosts analyzed each action in exchange. Kirk and Rasheeda would sometimes find themselves binge-watching response videos, scoffing at criticism, and rejoicing at encouraging moments. They rediscovered the bond that once bound them together by learning to block out the noise and concentrating instead on peaceful time spent at home, reading bedtime stories, and laughing over inside jokes. The path ahead is still steep. However, in order to make sure that Kirk's pledges resulted in long-lasting change, friends advised Rasheeda to maintain her limits, knowing that forgiveness is brittle. Kirk committed himself to doing small deeds of kindness, leaving notes for Rasheeda to discover, volunteering to help out around the house, and asking for advice whenever uncertainty surfaced. Every day, they came one step closer to taking back the life they had almost lost. One truth remained constant throughout it all: their narrative had been permanently changed by the consequences from the affair. The world had been watching every move, secrets had been revealed, and trust had been put to the test. But Kirk and Rasheeda found a certain resiliency in the furnace. Of betrayal and confession, only time would tell whether their love would blossom again or break down beneath lingering misgivings. They relocated for the time being, moving ahead together, resolute to allow integrity to lead them through the tumult they had previously caused. When the next morning arrived, it was tense as Rasheeda and Kirk reached a nearby courthouse. Like vultures circling new prey, cameras are positioned on every corner. There were murmurs in the lobby. Are they here to discuss custody? Is damage control involved in this public display? The typically reclusive couple's sudden entry into the court dispute has stunned many. As Kirk struggled with his tie, his fingers shaking, emotions were running hot. Rasheeda stood resolutely next to him, her chin up, but there was a tornado of uncertainty in her eyes. When Kirk's legal team said in a statement that he just wanted to create official visiting rights for the family, it caused division. Asserting that Rasheeda's bond with her real children was not threatened by his hidden child, the public perceived undercurrents of rivalry and power struggle beneath the well-chosen words, veneer. The emotion in the courtroom was palpable. Kirk's lawyer outlined the process of paternity confirmation first, revealing test findings that put the date of conception months ahead of Rasheeda's friends' predictions. When the court brought up the dates of conception that coincided with Kirk's departure from home, the gallery erupted in gasps. A stream of whispers poured through the space. At the time, he was on tour. Did he go to visit her without anybody? Noticing Rasheeda's heart was beating so loudly that she thought the judge may hear it as she squeezed her lips together. Kirk's attorney continued to detail a private compensation offer intended to protect the family from more controversy. When settlement was brought up, Rasheeda's brows furrowed, thinking it was an effort to buy her quiet. She remained silent throughout the courtroom altercation. A startled witness appeared. The social media personality, who claimed to be Kirk's child's mother. She wore jeans and a modest blouse when she took the stand, posed steady as she spoke about how she was shocked to hear of Kirk's hidden duplicate. Life calmly. She said, I never thought my son's father would be one half of reality TV's golden couple. Everyone was astounded by her poise. Kirk's team seemed tense when the influencer recalled a private message from Kirk pledging to make things right. Rasheeda's followers applauded quietly in her corner. The weight of his statements caused the courtroom to become quiet. The influencer's poise under duress astounds fans, praising her poise and courage even as she defied the man they looked up to. Journalists gathered outside Rasheeda's sister, who, for the first time since the incident, spoke up. As she spoke about the family's anguish, her voice wavered with rage. Kirk repaid us with deceit because we loved him like a son. When she accused Kirk of controlling everyone to protect his brand, cameras lit. The family was split up by what? She said. A few of the siblings gave a nod of agreement. Others defended themselves by shaking their heads at the idea of broadcasting personal complaints. As lines were made in the sand, emotions were running high. Loyalty broke down as fault. Lines that no one has before seen. Fan-made content surged on social media. Which side are you on, according to polls? The binary options didn't seem appropriate for such a complex betrayal. In the meanwhile, Kirk made his first private visit to the influencer's little apartment. Since paternity testing verified his paternity, he came in with a bunch of sweet voice wildflowers. I apologize for keeping this from you, she said, looking up from a pile of baby toys, eyes weary but curious. She said, why now? Kirk drew a trembling breath, acknowledging his dread of his formidable wife's criticism and the possible blow to his career. She gave him tea after listening, without interjecting. Every cup that was poured seemed to be a step closer to uncomfortable comprehension. Kirk saw her holding their baby son, in awe of the child's purity. The sight served as a sobering reminder of how much his secrets cost. A child born amid controversy. A once happy husband and wife are split apart, and a mother is propelled into unwelcome stardom. Kirk's humility in that situation, which stands in stark contrast to his haughtiness in public remarks, astounds fans. At home now, Rasheeda shifted back and forth between rage and desire. While wearing her dressing gown, she perused online discussion boards where her followers argued about whether she should make amends or go for good. She was advised by some remarks to take advantage of a PR win. Others cautioned her that forgiving someone may only lead to further betrayals in the future. As she scribbled, tears ran down her face. How do you rebuild a foundation shattered by lies? Was asked in a private discussion. A friend retorted with a straightforward reminder. The mortar that must hold is truth. Rasheeda closed her eyes and let those words to sink in. Each piece of trust seemed brittle, but there was a glimmer of hope in the prospect of rebuilding. And then there was another shocker. A voice note from Kirk arranging a late-night rendezvous with the influencer at a secluded property was shared by an unidentified source. His voice was audible, grainy but distinct. We must maintain the integrity of our tale. Rasheeda will not be able to find out until after the holidays. Speculation blogs were rocked by the release. The heartless tone shocks fans, who accuse Kirk of treating everyone like pieces for chess. As viewers replayed the message, emotions were running high, analyzing his induction for regret, desire, or apathy. The family was left split and in disarray, with some claiming that Rasheeda should leave using this proof and others calling for conflict and public display. Responsibility? Kirk responded with a surprise press conference without any prepared remarks. The influencer herself and legal counsel walked into the influencer's lawyer's office. Both as a man and as a partner, I failed. Those errors are mine. Rasheeda's heart was racing so hard that she thought her chest may explode as she watched the live video from her vehicle. Kirk went on, pledging to participate in any treatment sessions she desired in order to manage her stress and to withdraw from public life if necessary. Sweat and tears mixed on his face as he talked, displaying a raw vulnerability that has never been seen before. The sincerity of his confession astounds his fans. While some were sympathetic, others became skeptical that this was just another calculated move. Rasheeda went home that night for the first time since the story broke. She was greeted in quiet and affection in the entryway. Kirk was waiting under a chandelier made of crystal that used to gleam with pledge. Silently, he kicked off his shoes and walked up to her holding a solitary candle. He said, "I'm here," in a shaky voice. Rasheeda looked around at the scene, at the flickering flame, at the gentle touch, at the man who had caused so much suffering. She gave herself permission to step forward, but maintained a safe distance. Uncertain whether she would accept the offer, Kirk's fingers lingered. Their eyes locked, weighed down by the past. Neither spoke a word at that instant. They felt the tangible pressure of their previous choices. Rasheeda trembled inside, tears welling up in her eyes. Kirk softened his expression and took a leisurely take a step closer. Outside, kaleidoscopic patterns were created on the floor by the moonlight streaming through stained glass windows. The possibility of reconciliation and the risk of new heartache were both there in the quiet. The closeness of the event astounds fans, who see two giants of reality are vulnerable. With the smell of melting wax and nostalgia in the air, they debated if love could endure treachery. At last, in a barely discernible whisper, Rasheeda said, "Show me you mean it." Kirk nodded, "I will." And with that mutual exhale, among the rubble of confidence and the reverberations of public scrutiny, they found themselves at the beginning of their new chapter. As dawn broke, Kirk and Rasheeda were side by side in a certain, delicate, but unquestionably alive state. Out on the veranda, candle smoke from the shaky reconciliation from last night was still in the air. The birds chirped hesitantly, as if they weren't sure whether to rejoice at the couple's union. Rasheeda collected her thoughts and pulled a shawl over her shoulders, following the woven patterns with her fingertips, looking for a clue that there was more than uncertainty in their future. Kirk leaned against the railing and stared to the horizon where the sky and water blended together. Kirk was the first to speak, his voice quiet and serious in the gentle morning light, one sincere step at a time. "I want to reconstruct our lives." As she listened, Rasheeda folded and extending the blanket, he listed the minor adjustments he planned to make while reflecting on the significance of his remarks. Weekly phone-free check-ins, family meals free of interruptions, and individual therapy sessions to address the anxieties that had pushed him into hiding. Every pledge felt like a brick to a wall, designed to shield their brittle faith. Her eyes were far away as she nodded slowly. She said, "I'm afraid," in a voice that was almost audible. Kirk turned, his face furrowed with anxiety. Brushing a wayward hair, he extended his hand. Of hair off her face, he said, "I know, but he'll bear that worry for you, so you won't have to face it alone." The coldness of betrayal was lessened by the honesty in his tone, which cooled her emotions like warm water. In that instant, their common vulnerability seemed to bridge the gap between them. There were signs of their strife within the home, including half-packed luggage in the guest room, proof of Rasheeda's first impulse to run. The nursery is filled with silent toys that serve as a memory of their shared past. Kirk straightened a picture of them laughing on a tropical beach that was on the mantel. Rasheeda followed him, putting her palm over his, as if she wanted the recollection to remind them of the reason they had battled so hard. They unconsciously decided to battle for what was left between their fingers. They gathered at the kitchen table with their kids around. Lunchtime, Rasheeda set the table while Kirk prepared pancakes. Every motion is thoughtful and sincere.